Hi, I'm Walter Resendez with Access Electric, and today we have Linda with ALR Lighting, and she's going to be talking about Lutron and their Vive wireless lighting control system.
Yes.
So Linda, you want to tell us about that?
Okay. Well, just a really quick overview. Lutron is a company that was founded back in the early 1960s. The founder of the company is the person who actually invented the household dimmer, and from that platform developed more and more products up until the point where now not only are there all sorts of residential solutions, but also a full complement of commercial solutions all the way up to entire campus control. So you can go from a small office all the way up to large campus using Lutron's products. So the products that we're looking at today are it's a great solution for Title 24 compliance. Its sweet spot is commercial retrofit, but it's also really applicable for new construction as well.
Great. So commercial would be the home for this product.
Correct.
What would you use in a residential application?
Residential application uses the same wireless technology, but there are standalone dimmers and occupancy sensors. There is an entry-level whole home solution called Caseta Wireless, intended to be very simple, and you can go all the way up to a panel-based solution using the different Lutron products that are available for residences.
Okay. California came out with Title 24.
Yes.
And a lot of our people listening or watching may not have heard what Title 24 is yet, or why it's important to have a product like this.
Okay. So I can speak to that briefly. Title 24 is an energy code that California came out with, it's been quite some time ago, back, if you remember the oil embargo days, back in the 70s?
70s, yeah.
I'm old enough to remember sitting in the car waiting in line, on the day that it was our turn to fill gas up. So California responded to the energy crisis back then by enacting a code called Title 24, which gets changed, updated every 3 years. So I'm not sure exactly which version of the code we're on right now as far as how many there have been, but the whole idea behind Title 24 is to conserve energy and not have to construct more power plants in the state. And it's interesting when you look at the data, California as compared to the rest of the country, the per person energy usage has stayed relatively stable from way back when the code was first enacted when you compare it to other parts of the country, which is, the fact that California continues to grow and grow in population.
Right.
It shows that that code is actually making a difference. Not everybody's a big fan of the code. There's regulations that you have to meet, and to be able to get a project signed off on, you have to be code compliant. But what's great about this product is it makes it pretty easy, and we can talk about that more as we go on.
Yeah, well, I think it must have been maybe 4 or 5 years ago. Title 24 went through a big change. It might be longer than 4 or 5 years ago already, but it became a lot more stringent for commercial applications.
Yes, yeah. So what is required now is to have occupancy sensor, either have all of your lights captured under occupancy sensors, or by some sort of a panel or brain, if you will, that can have an automatic shutoff for all of the lights. The idea is if you drive through any city at nighttime, you look up at the office buildings, you see lights on all over the place. It's wasted energy. And if you have occupancy sensors in the space, or if those lights are programmed to be turned off at a certain time, then it's an automatic energy savings.
Right.
So.
Right. And so they introduced things like, besides occupancy sensors, dimming for bright office spaces, or anything with windows that brought light in from the outside, or skylights in an industrial application. So this is a way, maybe in a space that has been built and we can't go back and change the wiring, or it would be cost prohibitive to go back and change the wiring. Something like this would come in real handy, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Again, that's the sweet spot for this product for sure. It's great for commercial and industrial retrofit. So code, this last version of the code, which yes, it's actually been a few versions of the code, and it does continue to get more and more stringent, but the last version of the code requires that you have several different lighting levels, the ability to hit several different lighting levels on your fixtures. So with LED, we can do that. And with dimming, we can do that. So a lot of people are retrofitting their fixtures to LED and bringing their controls up to code, and not only becoming code compliant, but they're saving energy. So there's a lot of win-win in all of that.
Right, right. So how do we implement a product like this?
How do you implement a product? Well, this product, you and I chatted earlier, and I was sharing the fact that this product utilizes a RF technology that Lutron actually developed back in the 90s. So if you think about that, that's before internet, before we were all walking around with cell phones that were sending out signals constantly. Lutron developed this RF product, and what they wanted was something that was going to work. Like with lights, it's just not an option. You don't want the lights to work 95% of the time, you need them to work all of the time. So after doing a lot of research and development, they came up with operating their RF on a low bandwidth, which has the ability, you know, when you're at a stoplight and someone pulls up next to you and you hear that bass thumping, you know,
right.
That's that low bandwidth. It's that bass sound that really kind of penetrates through where you're not really hearing the high end of things. And this goes by that same thought process. This low bandwidth penetrates through building materials and is able to carry the signal. Now, there's regulations for using a low bandwidth like that. The FCC requires that these products are not constantly communicating, and when they do communicate, they can only have up to 5-second bursts of signal that goes out. So with this product, I can push a button, it will turn a light on, and then the devices stop talking to each other. It's really kind of that simple.
Oh.
So this is, again, technology that was developed back in the 90s. It was used in Lutron's residential products for years and introduced into the commercial product line about 8 or 9 years ago. And it is installed worldwide, hospitals, military bases, particularly like this product because of its reliability and lack of interference with other technologies. So reliability is a big story.
Right. So now if we have actually on this map here, you have an example of an office space, looks like?
Yes, yeah.
With conference rooms and offices and bathrooms, and so how would we implement it in something like that?
Okay, let's start maybe with this, looks like a little conference room right here. We can see that we have some windows. So we are going to need something that controls the lighting in the space. So probably some kind of a dimmer. And if you look at this product here on my demo, this will turn lights on and off and dim them up and down. And that is what you could use for this space. Now, if it's 0 to 10 volt, which that's the dimming technology that the commercial industry has kind of standardized on right now for controlling LEDs, you wouldn't necessarily have 0 to 10 volt wiring in the wall where you already had a switch or a dimmer. So a great way to address that is by something called a Lutron Pow Pack. So this guy right here will control up to 8 amps of 0 to 10 volt dimming load. So it wires to a knockout in a J-box in the ceiling, and then you take your 0 to 10 volt wires to your fixtures. Then where you already have a switch or a dimmer in the wall, you would just cap off those wires and replace that with something called a Pico Remote control. And I have it out here so you can kind of have a look at that. But you can see how you can capture a Pico behind a wall plate. Mm-hmm. And and it's very easy to program this product, and it's a press and hold a button on the Pow Pack, press and hold the off button on the Pico Remote. The lighting load will actually flash 3 times to say yes, we're associated now. It's kind of like an eHarmony match. So then those two are connected to one another. So now our lights that are up here in the ceiling space, we have 1 or more Pow Packs that are controlling those lights. We have that paired up with a Pico Remote that we can put behind a plate. We're going to need to have an occupancy sensor. So we have a wireless occupancy sensor here. You can see that it just has a regular camera battery in that. What's beautiful about this is you're not committed to cutting a hole in the ceiling, and then what if you put your aux sensor in the wrong place? Now you have to not only go back up there, cut a new hole, run new wires, patch the old hole, which never turns out nicely, right? You're able to move around, and you can actually put this guy into test mode, and it will stay lit up like that as long as it's sensing movement in the space. So you can kind of test out where you want to put it before you affix it a little bit more permanently to the ceiling. And then if we have windows in the space, which we see we do, then we have the same kind of thing, again, wireless. This is a daylight sensor. So this little window right here, you're gonna mount it to the ceiling so that window faces the actual windows in the space, so it's reading that light level that's coming in. And then again, you're gonna press and hold here, press and hold here. Now these are associated. Now we're gonna associate that daylight sensor with the appropriate load, and you have what's called a Title 24 compliant solution with that. If it's necessary to capture the receptacles in the space, there's actually also receptacles that will, the occupancy sensor that's already in the space speaking to the lights will also turn the receptacle on and off.
Okay, and that's a requirement as well.
It can be. It's required in certain spaces, not necessarily all the time when you're doing retrofits. If you're moving walls, you are required to, if I'm not mistaken, I'm not a code expert, I know enough to make it dangerous, but if I'm not mistaken, if you're moving walls, then you do have to add controlled receptacle.
Right. So great, so that will get that conference room in compliance. So we need a POW pack.
Yes.
We need
a Pico Remote.
A Pico Remote. We need the occupancy sensor and the light sensor.
Yes, the daylight sensor.
Daylight sensor.
And you may or may not need plug load control. So and maybe more than one POW pack. So say if you have a chandelier or some sort of a fixture over the table, but you also have some down lights in the space, or maybe some other lights that are accenting the trophies that are in the case, or that sort of thing, you would need one POW pack for every load of light that you want to control.
Okay, so this would come in handy if you had, say, an auditorium or a church facility or somewhere where they retrofit a room to have presentations.
Correct.
And now the lighting doesn't turn off the way they want it to turn off.
Right.
Instead of rewiring the whole room, we can install a POW pack and maybe a Pico Remote, and we can maybe control the stage lights to go off.
Right.
And
house lights dim
the house
down.
Lights dim down. Great.
Or house down, stage up. Really the possibilities are endless of what you can do
without
with
rewiring the whole space.
Without rewiring the whole space.
That's a great solution.
There is some wiring, right? You're going to need to wire your 0 to 10 volt wires up in the space, but you're not having to pull those wires down a wall.
Right.
Those are
all low voltage wire.
Correct.
So we can run a low voltage like Belden cable between each fixture from our POW pack.
From our POW pack.
Okay.
So it doesn't have to go through your conduit. Yeah.
Great.
So, and another option, speaking of that particular scenario, is this Pico Remote right here. Let me go back for a minute. The one that we first looked at has an on-off, and then a dim up and down, and then this button right here in the middle is called the favorite button, kind of like a radio station in your car. You find that favorite light setting you like, you can press and hold this button, and it will capture that. So now every time you walk in the space and you press that button, the lights will come on to that light level. So you can also get this Pico without that, with the on-off and raise lower, without the favorite button. There's lots of flavors of Pico remotes. But this guy right here actually has, you can see it looks different. It has 3 buttons here and then an all-off button. Each one of these can be a scene. So for our conference room, we can have one light level for if we're sitting and having a meeting. You don't really want glary lights in your eyes, so maybe you have your down lights on and your conference table fixture on, and but you have them dimmed to a certain level. But now we want to get on the computer and show a presentation on the screen on the wall. Maybe we want a little bit of uplight, but dim the rest of the lights in the space. You can do that, and you can capture each one of those scenes, if you will, on one of these buttons. So, and this can just even sit at the conference room table, and it's just a quick button press to toggle between those different light settings in the space.
Great.
And you can do that in your scenario with the church.
Yeah.
So
for presentations or for just a general get together.
Right.
Or you want the lights to be really dimmed. You can set up 3 different scenarios. That comes in real handy.
Yeah, then it's not a situation where somebody's over at the wall control kind of playing around. That's distracting.
Right.
What you want is for your light to be functional in the space and that you're not thinking about what the lighting's doing. That's good lighting. So if we look at, I'll move some of these things out of the way. If we look back on our little map here, we have some hallways. So in this hallway scenario, you wouldn't want necessarily to use this occupancy sensor. This is ceiling mounted. It has a 360-degree view. You might want to have a occupancy sensor like this that you mount on one end of the hallway, and it has a coverage pattern that sort of shoots down the hall. You can also get this form factor in a Occ sensor that you would mount in a corner. Okay. And it looks out into the room, kind of, with that look. Yes, okay. At a 90 degree. This is actually perfect for the small offices. You would mount that over the door so it's looking into the space. That way it doesn't pick up motion from outside the hallway. There's a whole, people have a lot of mixed feelings about occupancy sensors, and usually it's because they've experienced occupancy sensors that don't work properly. So you don't want to be walking down a hall and triggering lights in different rooms, and it's about smart placement, and that's what you're able to do with this product. Right. Is to put it where it's needed, and again, if it's working the way it's supposed to, you're not thinking about the lights because it's just doing what it's supposed to.
How long do these batteries tend to last?
The battery life is, Lutron says that it's an average 10-year battery life. The research actually suggests that it's more like 13 years, but wow. Lutron is a very engineering-driven company. They're very rigorous with their testing, and so to err on the side of caution a little bit, 10-year battery life is what they say happens with their products. So with this guy right here, it's just a little watch battery, and I showed you the camera battery that went into the Occ sensors. So nothing proprietary. It's not some fancy expensive battery that you can only buy through Lutron. It's something you can go pick up at your corner store and sure. Pop that battery in and out. With the occupancy sensors and the daylight sensor, when the batteries are starting to go, when there's still 25% life left on them, this area right here is going to turn on and stay that way until you change out the battery. So you have, so if
visual indicator.
Yes, a visual indicator. So if it's a 10-year battery and there's still 25% left in it, at about year 7.5, that's going to light up, and you have 2.5 years to swap your batteries out.
And hopefully somebody who was there 7 years ago who can remember. That means the battery's going bad.
Yes, that's true. Hopefully they kept good records. But you know what? It has Lutron's name on it, and Lutron has head and shoulders above the rest a customer service support line that is unparalleled.
Good point.
So you pick up the phone, you call Lutron. What does this mean? You need to change your battery out, and you're taken care of. So all of these products, as I've talked about them, can be used in a standalone fashion. So I can go in and just do one office space and bring it up to Title 24 code. So code requires, if you are changing out the lighting, you need to bring your controls up to code. So what this means for a building owner, a business owner, is that they can do one space at a time without having to do the rewiring without having to put in a whole new system for the whole building. So they can do a space at a time.
So it's a lot less impact for the space.
Correct.
And a lot less impact on their wallet.
Right.
Very good.
And however, there are code requirements that once you hit 10,000 square feet, so if you are doing a renovation and it's 10,000 square feet or more, then you are required not only to have the dimming and the occupancy sensing and that sort of thing, but now you have to have the ability to do scheduling and something called load shed. So load shed basically means having the ability to receive a signal from the utility if we're having a brownout or some sort of a crisis where we need to direct our energy elsewhere. So if you can receive, you would receive a signal from the utility, and that would take the lighting down. It would take all of your lighting down to 70% of capacity. And there are ways to achieve that it's not too terribly complicated, but that's a requirement for 10,000 square feet and more, and also the ability to do scheduling. So that means we want to be able to schedule the lights to come on at a certain time, go off at a certain time, not be on in holidays if the business isn't open, that sort of thing. And that's a requirement for 10,000 square feet or more. But oftentimes business owners want that functionality because it does, the scheduling piece of it does end up saving them money to be able to schedule their lights to come on and off. And there's life safety concerns with that as well. If it's a business that opens before it gets light, for there to be some lights on and a path of ingress for the employees, that makes it helpful as well. So it's not, there are plenty of applications below 10,000 square feet that people choose to do that. So the way to accomplish that with the Vive product is to add something called the Vive Hub. So this little guy just gets mounted up into the ceiling space. You bring line voltage power to it. It creates its own Wi-Fi. And once you install one of those, then you program all of the rest of your devices through an app on a smartphone or tablet. And you associate all of your devices through the app, and then as you're going along, you would create rooms in the app and then be able to schedule. So if it's a business, you want the lights in the front reception area to come on, maybe in the hallways, but maybe we just have those lights come on to 50%. And then as employees begin to arrive, the occupancy sensor senses that they're there and takes the lighting up to maybe 70%. Then if they really want it to be more light, they can walk over to the wall and raise the light level even more. So with all of these different things, if you're not running your lights at 100% nonstop the whole time, you're realizing a lot of savings.
Absolutely.
In that way. So that's kind of the Vive product in a nutshell. I can show you how we associate these products together. So I'm going to give you the Pico Remote control.
Okay.
Okay, so we're going to do a standalone programming.